What's up, guys? It's the Casual King MMA, and today we're going to be looking at some washed allegations in the UFC. Now, the term washed is one you will hear thrown around way too much, in my opinion, which I'll get to why. But if you don't know, washed basically means the fighter just isn't who they were. They've lost the step. They don't have this, they're not who they were. They're not as good as they were. It's over. Basically, it's over. That's what washed means, and today, if you're watching today, we just watched Adesanya lose by second round KO against Imanov. A lot of fans, and basically this was the inspiration for this video. A lot of fans online, on Twitter, were saying that Adesanya is washed. And it makes sense on paper why you would say that. Adesanya's 1-4 in his last 5, and he's coming off a 3-fight losing streak after today. It seems like he's washed. However, you have to take a closer look to try to justify him being washed. If you want to look at his 5-fight losing, like his 1-4, started off with losing a fight against Alex Pereira. Happens. Not only that, Adesanya was up on all judges' scorecards going into the 5th round. All he had to do was survive, and he won the fight, and he got TKO'd with over a minute left. He still looked very good. Then, he knocks out Alex Pereira. The only person in the UFC to beat Alex Pereira. Adesanya knocks him out cold. But then he goes on a 3-fight losing streak, you say. Loses to Sean Strickland. Not great, but turns out it's a tricky stylistic matchup. Adesanya wasn't able to get going. I guess teeps to the body and jabs are the equal makes you the best striker in MMA. But it was a hard stylistic matchup for Adesanya. Against DDP, I thought Adesanya looked maybe the best he's ever looked. Great body strikes, great movement. He looked fantastic. He was beating DDP up big, gets caught in the 4th and choked out. It happens. Same thing happened against Imanov. Same thing happened. He looked very good in the 1st round, won the 1st round, got caught. Valid criticism, you could say. Adesanya's lost his chin. That's fair. But the performances he's putting on, his skill, his technique, the mentality is all still there. He still is Adesanya. He just doesn't have as good of a chin as he used to have. It doesn't make him washed. Another example, Robert Whittaker. Oh, Whittaker's lost. He got choked out by Chimaev very easily. Oh, Whittaker's washed then, huh? Well, fight before that, he beat Paulo Costa. Looked great. However, it's annoying. After DDP beat Whittaker, you hear, oh, Whittaker's washed. Then he goes on a 2-fight win streak. Oh, he's back. And then he loses to Chimaev. He's washed. MMA fans are fickle and have very bad memories. Robert Whittaker is not washed. He has looked the same in his last 6 fights. He's looked the same. Nothing's really changed. DDP was a better fighter than him and had a good stylistic matchup. And Chimaev is just a monster who chokes people out very easily. It happens. That has nothing to do with Whittaker being washed. Saying Whittaker is washed only takes away from DDP and Chimaev's performances and makes you look very salty. Another example, Volkanovski. Sorry guys, no, this image isn't great. 2-fight KO losing streak. 1-3 in his last 4. Volk's washed. Well, if you want to look at his last 2 fights, Ilya and Islam are the pound for pound 2 best fighters in the UFC. He moved up on short notice, got head kicked by Islam. Happens when you fight the best fighter in the world up a weight class on short notice. And he got KO'd by Ilya. Happens. Ilya just KO'd Max Holloway. And people are saying Max is washed after he just knocked out Gaethje. Fans are salty, and they don't want to give deserving fighters their due. Before the 2-fight losing streak, Volkanovski absolutely obliterated Yair Rodriguez and, in the eyes of many fans, beat Islam Makhachev up a weight class. He is not washed. He simply lost to 2 better fighters. You could say maybe he's lost a slight step, but Volkanovski easily clears almost every single featherweight. He can beat lightweights. He could beat ranked lightweights. Like, I don't understand the washed allegations. If you think Volkanovski can't go out there and absolutely obliterate Ortega or Yair or Arnold Allen right now, you're insane. Volkanovski is still very good. He's just no longer the best because better fighters have come. And for the last horrible example of a washed fighter, Kamaru Usman. Lost 2 fights on a 3-fight losing streak, lost twice against Leon Edwards, and just recently lost to Chimaev. A little bit more valid than the rest of them. Maybe common knowledge, Usman has very bad knees. One really big mistake he had was on the Joe Rogan podcast, he mentioned how bad his knees were, how he needs to walk on grass and walk backwards down the stairs. So physically, he's no longer in his prime. However, if you want to look at the performances, against Leon Edwards, he was dominating and got head kicked in the final round. Lost the rematch, but Leon Edwards was simply better than Usman is at this point. And had a good stylistic matchup. And his most recent fight against Chimaev, not only was it on short notice, he had the closest fight against Chimaev. I know the Gilbert Burns fight was a war, but Chimaev obviously won that fight 2-1. I think Usman won that fight. Usman won the second and third round. Chimaev does not get a 10-8 round for laying on Usman. 10-8 rounds are for damage. If you lay on a guy for 5 minutes, you don't get a 10-8 round. And that's Usman's last performance. He's lost a step. His knees are shot. But he's not washed. He is still easily top 5 in the world. I'm tired of hearing it. All it does is it takes away from the winning fighter's performance. It makes you look salty because you're mad your fighter lost, so you pretend they're washed. And it takes away from your favorite fighter looking good because all you're doing is focusing on the result. Is Dustin Poirier washed because he got submitted in the 5th round against Islam, even though he looked better than ever? You got to stop focusing on results. Focus on how they actually look inside the octagon. For a better example of washed, Colby Covington. Colby has not looked like himself his last 2 fights. Got embarrassed in both of them. Colby is a fighter that you could say is washed, and I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't disagree with you. I think I mainly agree. Colby has lost a step. He has slowed down, and Colby losing that step, losing a little bit in the pressure game, is the reason why he's not looking the same. However, it's still a similar Colby that went on those title runs. Maybe you could say Colby was never that good. That's a take. But saying Colby is washed takes away from Joaquin Buckley's performance. Buckley had an amazing game plan, keeping his distance, amazing takedown defense, great uppercuts, paced himself well, landed hard to the body. Still didn't break Colby. Colby was still willing to fight even with that nasty cut. Don't take away from Buckley's performance. Colby may be washed, but don't focus on that. Focus on, wow, Buckley looked really good. I can see him. I can see Buckley beating Belal Muhammad right now. There's still fighters he loses. I think he loses the JDM. I think he loses the Shavkat. But there are fighters he loses. That's also an example of why Styles makes fights. If I'm going to pick Buckley against the champ, and then he loses to contenders. But that's just how it goes. Styles make fights. Joaquin Buckley was a bad style for Colby Covington. Colby's not as good as he used to be. He could still win fights in the UFC. He could still win fights in the UFC. I mean, Colby against Gilbert Burns right now, you can't tell me that wouldn't be a close fight. I'm not going to pick Colby, but they're on similar levels. For the final example, I got one more after this. Kevin Holland is an interesting thing. He's washed. He's completely washed. But he's washed mentally. Kevin Holland has resigned himself to being a gatekeeper. He doesn't have the mental toughness he had on his rise. And even on his rise, fighting at middleweight, getting laid on, he has shown an acceptance to losing that does not make him championship material. He's underperforming. He has shown the ability to be great and has not delivered on that. And his most recent fight, quick tap out, I don't think he has it anymore. He's washed. At the same time, though, he never was a top 5 fighter. All he's done is refuse to grow, refuse to get better, and is willing to accept quick defeats because he'll make more money. He'll make more money losing his win bonus and fighting again in 2 months than going to war and getting that win bonus and then having to take 6 months off. Final example, and who I think is the perfect example of a fighter who's washed, is Paulo Costa. Went on an undefeated run towards the title, and we're going full circle, bringing Izzy back again. Went on an undefeated run up to Israel Adesanya. Looked unbeatable, looked like a monster. Adesanya exposed some holes in his game, bad ring cutting, and he mentally broke him. Paulo Costa, the fight before this, went to war with Yoel Romero in the pocket and won. Nobody goes to war with Romero in the pocket. Israel Adesanya refused to throw on him because Romero is like that. And Paulo Costa went to war in the pocket and won. Paulo Costa's issue, though, is he could be the hammer and the nail. He could take a beating, but he has to land one back. Adesanya had Paulo Costa missed it, hitting air, mentally broke him, finished and humped him. After that, Paulo Costa has never looked the same. It wasn't because he lost a step physically. It wasn't because he lost a step technically. He stopped caring as much, and that's what made him washed. Missing weight against Vettori, making the fight all the way at light heavyweight, losing. But at the same time, he still looked good in fights. He looked good against Whittaker, but he underperformed against Sean Strickland. But Paulo Costa has everything it takes to be champion except for the mentality. He had the mentality going up against Adesanya. Adesanya broke him, and he lost what he had. But at the same time, that's more of a loss of mentality. I'm tired of hearing a fighter's washed. A fighter can lose a step. A fighter can slow down and they can age. They can lose it mentally. Those are better words to describe what happened to them. Saying a fighter's washed, it simplifies such a complex sport. There's so many things going on. Your physical strength, your technique, your mentality. There's a lot of things that combine to build who you are as a UFC fighter. If you lose one, it makes the others look worse. But stop talking about being washed. The only person who's really washed is my favorite fighter, Tony Ferguson. And we're going to end it on that note. Peace, guys.